The arrival. The sky burned. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the roof of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, her eyes fixed on the horizon, where alien ships descended like vengeful gods. The air crackled with energy, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but nothing could have truly prepared her for the reality of an alien invasion. "Captain, we're receiving reports from all over the globe." Lieutenant Akira Tanaka's voice crackled through her earpiece. "They're hitting major cities simultaneously. Our conventional weapons are barely making a dent in their shields." Sarah clenched her fists, her mind racing. "What about the orbital defense network?" "Neutralized in the first wave, ma'am. We're effectively blind up there." A nearby explosion rocked the building, and Sarah stumbled, catching herself on the railing. In the distance, she could see the sleek, obsidian forms of alien dropships, their hulls shimmering with an eerie blue energy field. Earth's jets scrambled to intercept them, but their missiles seemed to dissipate harmlessly against the alien shields. "Tanaka, get me a direct line to General Okoi. We need to regroup and reassess our strategy." As Sarah made her way back into the building, alarms blared, and personnel rushed through the corridors. The command center was a hive of activity, screens flickering with incoming data and distress calls from around the world. General Adebayo Okoi stood at the center of the chaos, his weathered face set in grim determination. "Captain Chen, glad you could join us. The situation is dire. We're looking at a coordinated attack on every major military installation and population center." Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the tactical displays. "Sir, our weapons are ineffective against their shielding technology. We need to find a weakness, and fast." As if in response to her words, a young scientist burst into the room, his lab coat askew and his eyes wide with excitement. "General, Captain, I think I've found something." Dr. Ethan Reeves, the lead researcher at UEDF's Advanced Weapons Division, fumbled with a tablet as he approached. "We've been analyzing the energy signatures from the alien shields. There's a pattern, a fluctuation that occurs every time they're hit with a certain type of electromagnetic pulse." General Okoi leaned in, his interest piqued. "Go on, Doctor." "It's not much, but for a fraction of a second, their shields weaken. The problem is, we don't have any weapons that can exploit such a brief window." Sarah's mind raced, an idea forming. What about old tech? Something they wouldn't expect or have defenses against. Dr. Reeves blinked. Then his eyes lit up. That could work. Something like a railgun, or even older. What about artillery? A howitzer? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. General Okoi was the first to speak. A howitzer? Against spaceships. It's insane, but it just might work. Captain Chen, I want you to oversee this project. Work with Dr. Reeves and see if you can make this crazy idea a reality. Sarah saluted, a spark of hope igniting in her chest. Yes, sir. We'll make it work. As she left the command center with Dr. Reeves in tow, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of determination and fear. The fate of humanity might just rest on their ability to turn an outdated weapon into humanity's last hope. Over the next few days, while alien forces continued their relentless advance, Sarah and her team worked tirelessly. They requisitioned old howitzers from museums and military storage, retrofitting them with cutting-edge targeting systems and specially designed shells. The key, Dr. Reeves explained as they worked, is to hit them with an electromagnetic pulse at precisely the right moment, then follow up immediately with a kinetic strike. The EMP will create that split-second vulnerability, and the physical projectile will do the real damage. Sarah nodded, her hands working deftly to adjust the firing mechanism. And they won't see it coming. They'll be looking for energy weapons, missiles, not chunks of metal hurled by explosives. As they prepared their secret weapon, reports from around the world grew increasingly grim. Major cities had fallen, Millions were displaced, and Earth's conventional military forces were being systematically dismantled. Finally, after a week of feverish work, they were ready for a field test. Sarah stood beside the modified Howitzer, set up on a hill overlooking what had once been a thriving metropolis, now a battleground. "All units, stand by," she spoke into her comm. "Fire on my mark." In the distance, an alien dropship descended, its shields glimmering in the afternoon sun. Sarah took a deep breath, her finger hovering over the firing control. Now, the howitzer roared to life, a sound that hadn't been heard on a battlefield in decades. The specialized shell arced through the air, trailing wisps of electromagnetic energy. It struck the alien shield, creating a brief flicker. A split second later, the kinetic projectile followed, punching through the weakened barrier and striking the ship's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a screech of tearing metal, the dropship began to spin, trailing smoke and debris as it plummeted from the sky. Cheers erupted from the human forces, but Sarah remained focused. "Reload. We've got more incoming." As alien reinforcements swarmed towards their position, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. They had found a weakness, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. But the real battle was yet to come. The war for Earth's survival had entered a new phase, and humanity was finally ready to fight back. The underdog's gambit. The success of the modified howitzer spread like wildfire through Earth's remaining defense forces. What had started as a desperate gambit had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that humanity still had a fighting chance against the technologically superior invaders. Captain Sarah Chen found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The United Earth Defense Force had initiated Operation Thunderclap, a global effort to retrofit and deploy howitzers against the alien threat. But time was not on their side. "We've got reports of major alien pushes in Asia and South America," Lieutenant Tanaka informed her during a strategy meeting. "They're adapting to our new tactics, changing their attack patterns to minimize exposure to our artillery." General Okoi nodded grimly. "They're learning. We need to stay one step ahead." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes scanning the holographic map before them. "What if we change our deployment strategy? Instead of fixed positions, we use mobile platforms. Keep them guessing." Dr. Reeves, who had become an integral part of the team, chimed in. "We could also vary the electromagnetic frequencies, make it harder for them to predict and counter the pulses." The next few weeks were a blur of action and innovation. Sarah worked closely with engineering teams to mount howitzers on rapidly deployable mobile platforms. Meanwhile, Dr. Reeves and his team refined the EMP technology, creating a range of frequencies that could be cycled through rapidly. But it wasn't just about technology. Sarah knew that the human element would be crucial. She personally oversaw the training of artillery crews, drilling them relentlessly on rapid deployment, target acquisition, and evasive maneuvers. "Remember," she told a group of young soldiers during a training session, "we're not just firing a weapon. We're buying time for humanity. Every alien ship we bring down is another day our people survive, another chance to turn this war around." As the training intensified, so did the pressure. Alien forces had established strongholds in several major cities, using them as bases for further incursions. The howitzers had slowed their advance, but the invaders were far from defeated. One evening, as Sarah pored over battle reports in her makeshift office, she received an unexpected visitor. It was Private Maria Gonzalez, one of the younger recruits in the artillery program. "Captain," Maria said, her voice trembling slightly, I'm scared. What if this isn't enough? What if we're just delaying the inevitable?" Sarah looked at the young soldier, seeing the fear and doubt that she herself fought against every day. She stood and placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. "Fear is natural, Private. But remember this, throughout history, humanity has faced seemingly insurmountable odds, and time again, we've surprised ourselves with our resilience, our creativity, and our determination." She walked to a window, gazing out at the bustling base where howitzers were being prepared for deployment. "Look out there. Just a few weeks ago, we thought we were finished. Now we're fighting back. We're adapting, innovating, refusing to give up. That's what makes us human, and that's why we'll win." Maria straightened, a new resolve visible in her posture. "Thank you, Captain. I needed to hear that." As the private left, Sarah turned back to her reports, a renewed sense of purpose flowing through her. They were the underdogs in this fight, but throughout history, underdogs had changed the course of wars through sheer will and ingenuity. The next day brought a critical test of their new strategies. Alien forces launched a major offensive against one of Earth's last remaining strongholds in Europe. Sarah coordinated the defense from a mobile command center, orchestrating the deployment of howitzer units with the precision of a conductor leading a symphony. "Echo Team, deploy to Sector 7. Foxtrot, I need suppressing fire on that cruiser. Delta, stand by for rapid relocation." The battle raged for hours, the sky lit by the flash of electromagnetic pulses and the trails of kinetic projectiles. Alien ships fell from the sky, their once impenetrable shields now vulnerable to Earth's revitalized artillery. But the aliens fought back fiercely. Energy beams lanced across the battlefield, vaporizing human positions. Dropships deployed waves of ground troops, their advanced weaponry cutting through defensive lines. In the heat of battle, Sarah received an urgent communication from Dr. Reeves. "Captain, we've detected a new energy signature from the alien flagship. They're charging some kind of massive weapon." Sarah's mind raced. This could be the aliens' attempt to neutralize the howitzer threat once and for all. She had to act fast. "All units, this is Captain Chen. We have a priority target. I need all available howitzers to concentrate fire on these coordinates." She uploaded the targeting data, a high-risk gambit that would leave other sectors vulnerable. But if they could take out the flagship before it unleashed its weapon, it might just turn the tide of the entire war. Fire at will. The next few minutes were the longest of Sarah's life. Howitzers thundered across the battlefield, their shells arcing towards a single point in the sky. The alien flagship's shields flickered under the barrage, pulses of electromagnetic energy creating brief windows of vulnerability. For a moment, it seemed like it wasn't enough. The flagship's weapon continued to charge, a terrifying glow building at its bow. Then, with a flash that lit up the sky like a second sun, a shell found its mark. The massive alien ship shuddered, secondary explosions rippling along its hull. "Direct hit," Tanaka's voice crackled over the comm. "The flagship is going down." Cheers erupted across all channels as the enormous vessel began to lose altitude, trailing fire and debris. Its destruction sent shockwaves through the alien forces, their coordinated attack faltering and breaking apart. As the dust settled and the extent of their victory became clear, Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief. They had won a significant battle, proving that their strategy could work on a large scale. But she knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would regroup, adapt, and return with new tactics. The war was far from over. As she watched Earth's forces secure the battlefield, Sarah's resolve hardened. They had shown what humanity could do when pushed to the brink. Now, it was time to push back. The underdog's gambit had paid off, but the greatest challenges still lay ahead. Sarah Chen and Earth's defenders would need every ounce of courage, creativity, and determination to see this war through to the end. The turning point. The destruction of the alien flagship marked a pivotal moment in the war. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had dealt a significant blow to the enemy. The victory galvanized Earth's defenders and sent shockwaves through the alien command structure. But Captain Sarah Chen knew better than to celebrate too soon. As she stood in the war room of the UED's mobile headquarters, she could see both the progress they'd made and the challenges that lay ahead. "The aliens are pulling back from major population centers," Lieutenant Tanaka reported, gesturing to the holographic map. "They're consolidating their forces, probably to reassess their strategy. General Okoye nodded, his expression a mix of satisfaction and concern. This gives us a much-needed breather, but we can't afford to let our guard down. Captain Chen, what's the status of our howitzer units? Sarah stepped forward, bringing up a detailed report on the main screen. We've expanded our artillery course significantly, sir. Thanks to Dr. Reeves and his team, we've also improved the EMP yield of our shells. But we're starting to see signs that the aliens are developing countermeasures. Dr. Reeves, who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner, spoke up. She's right. Our latest intel suggests they're working on some kind of adaptive shielding. If they perfect it, our current advantage might be neutralized. A tense silence fell over the room. They all knew what was at stake. If the aliens overcame the howitzer threat, Earth would be back to square one, facing an enemy they couldn't hope to defeat with conventional means. Sarah's mind raced, considering options. Then an idea struck her. What if we changed the game entirely? Instead of trying to stay ahead of their shield technology, we go after something they can't easily protect. General Okoye leaned forward, intrigued. What do you have in mind, Captain? Their communication networks, Sarah said, her excitement growing as the plan formed in her mind. We've been so focused on taking down their ships that we've overlooked a critical vulnerability. If we can disrupt their ability to coordinate, we might be able to fragment their forces and pick them apart. Dr. Reeves' eyes lit up. That could work. We've collected enough data on their transmission frequencies. If we retool our EMP technology to target those specific bands, we could create a communications blackout. Sarah finished. Imagine alien units cut off from Central Command, unable to receive orders or call for reinforcements. General Okoye stood, a spark of hope in his eyes. This could be the turning point we've been waiting for. Captain Chen, you have full authorization to proceed with this plan. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah worked closely with Dr. Reeves and a team of communication experts to modify their EMP technology. They reproposed old radio towers and satellite dishes, creating a network that could blanket large areas with targeted electromagnetic interference. As they worked, reports came in of alien forces regrouping for a major offensive. It was a race against time, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Finally, on the eve of the expected alien attack, they were ready. Sarah stood in the command center, surrounded by screens showing the positions of both human and alien forces. All units, this is Captain Chen. Operation Silent Storm is a go. Commence EMP broadcast on my mark. She took a deep breath, her finger hovering over the activation switch. 3, 2, 1, mark. Across the globe, modified transmitters hummed to life, flooding the airwaves with precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, chaos erupted. On the tactical displays, alien ship formations began to break apart. Ground units stopped in their tracks, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. It's working, Dr. Reeves exclaimed, his eyes wide as he analyzed incoming data. Their comm systems are completely scrambled. They can't maintain formation or receive orders. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Now's our chance. All artillery units, commence firing. Air support, you are cleared to engage. Let's show them what humanity can do. What followed was a masterclass in tactical warfare. With the aliens unable to coordinate their efforts, Earth's forces struck hard and fast. Howitzers rained down electromagnetic chaos and kinetic fury, while fighter jets and ground troops mopped up confused and isolated enemy units. For hours, the battle raged across multiple fronts. Sarah coordinated the global effort from the command center, her mind racing to stay ahead of the rapidly evolving situation. Despite the initial success, she knew the aliens would eventually adapt. "Captain," Lieutenant Tanaka called out suddenly, "we're detecting a massive energy spike from the alien rear lines. I think they're trying to burn through our interference." Sarah's jaw clenched. This was the moment she'd been dreading. "Patch me through to Beta Squad," she ordered. A moment later, the gruff voice of Sergeant Rodriguez came through. "Beta Squad here, Captain. We're seeing some heavy activity on our scopes. What are your orders?" "Sergeant, I need your team to take out that transmitter. It's a high-risk mission, but if they restore their comms, we lose our advantage." There was a brief pause before Rodriguez responded. "Understood, Captain. We'll get it done." Sarah watched on the tactical display as Beta Squad's markers moved towards the alien position. Her heart raced, knowing she had just sent good soldiers into extreme danger. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. Suddenly, Rodriguez's voice crackled through, heavy with static. "Captain, we've reached the target, but they got it heavily guarded. We need immediate fire support to have any chance." Sarah hesitated for a split second. The area was crawling with alien forces, and any strike risked hitting her own people. But the alternative was unthinkable. "All nearby artillery units, redirect fire to these coordinates," she commanded, inputting the location. "Danger close." "I repeat, danger close." The next few moments were tense as shells rained down near Beta Squad's position. The tactical display was a chaos of explosions and movement. "Beta Squad, report," Sarah called out, her voice tense. For a long moment, there was only static. Then, Rodriguez's voice came through, weak but triumphant. "Target destroyed, Captain. Alien transmitter is down. We've got casualties, but we did it." A collective sigh of relief went through the command center. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, silently acknowledging the sacrifice of those who had fallen. "Good work, Sergeant. Medevac is on its way. You've just turned the tide of this war." As Beta Squad was extracted, the full impact of their action became clear. Without their central communication network, the alien forces fell into disarray. Earth's defenders pressed their advantage, driving back the invaders on multiple fronts. Hours turned into days as the battle continued, but the momentum had shifted. Humanity was no longer on the defensive. They were taking the fight to the enemy. A week after Operation Silent Storm began, Sarah stood with General Okoye and Dr. Reeves, looking out over a liberated city. "We've pushed them back to their primary landing zones," Okoye said, his voice filled with cautious optimism. "For the first time, we have a real shot at winning this war." Sarah nodded, her expression determined. "But they're not defeated yet. They'll regroup, try to find a way around our tactics. We need to press our advantage while we have it." Dr. Reeves spoke up, his tone thoughtful. "There's something else to consider. We've seen the extent of their technology, their weapons, but we still know almost nothing about them. Their motivations, their society. You think we should try to communicate with them?" Sarah asked, surprised. "I think we need to understand our enemy," Reeves replied, "especially if we hope to end this conflict for good." General Okoye considered this for a moment. "You may be right, Doctor. Captain Chen, I want you to put together a team. Your mission will be twofold. Continue to lead our offensive, but also seek out any opportunity to gather intelligence on the aliens themselves." Sarah saluted, her mind already racing with the implications of this new directive. "Yes, sir. We'll find a way to beat them, and maybe understand them in the process." As they turned back to the command center, Sarah felt a mix of emotions. They had achieved a major victory, turned the tide of the war. But the hardest part was still to come. The aliens were cornered now, and a cornered enemy was often the most dangerous. The next phase of the war would require not just military might, but diplomacy, intelligence, and a deep understanding of their adversary. Sarah Chen, the captain who had helped give humanity a fighting chance, now faced her greatest challenge yet. As the sun set over the recovering Earth, Sarah steeled herself for what was to come. The turning point had been reached, but the true test of humanity's resilience and ingenuity was just beginning. The alien dilemma. In the wake of Operation Silent Storm, the landscape of the war had dramatically shifted. Humanity, once on the brink of defeat, had pushed the alien invaders back to their primary strongholds. But as Captain Sarah Chen knew all too well, this new phase of the conflict brought its own set of challenges. Sarah stood in a newly established forward operating base, surrounded by holographic displays showing the current state of the battlefield. Alien forces had consolidated their positions, creating heavily fortified zones that bristled with advanced weaponry. They're dug in deep, Lieutenant Tanaka observed, zooming in on one of the alien strongholds. Conventional assaults would be suicide. Sarah nodded grimly. And we can't rely on the same tricks that got us this far. They've adapted to our EMP tactics, developed countermeasures against our howitzers. We need something new. As if on cue, Dr. Reeves entered the command center, his tablet clutched tightly in his hands. "Captain, I think you need to see this," he said, his voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. He tapped his tablet, and a new hologram sprang to life in the center of the room. It showed a series of complex waveforms and data streams. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowed. "This," Reeves said, pointing to a particular pattern, "is an alien transmission we managed to intercept and partially decrypt. It's not tactical data or battlefield commands. Well, I believe it's a distress call." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Sarah leaned in closer, studying the alien communication. A distress call. To whom? Reeves shook his head. "That's unclear. But the tone, the repetition of certain patterns, it has all the hallmarks of a plea for help or reinforcement." Sarah's mind raced. This was potentially game-changing information. If they're calling for help, that means they're more vulnerable than we thought, Tanaka finished. "Or more desperate," Sarah added. She turned to Dr. Reeves. "Can you tell me anything else about this transmission? Any clues about their situation, their mindset?" Reeves hesitated. "It's mostly conjecture at this point, but there are elements in the message that don't align with what we've seen of their military communication. It's more emotive, for lack of a better term." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Emotive? You mean they have feelings?" "All evidence suggests they're a sentient, advanced species," Reeves replied. "It stands to reason they would have emotions, even if they're alien to us. This message, it carries a sense of urgency, perhaps even fear." The implications were staggering. Up until now, they had viewed the aliens as an implacable, almost mechanical enemy. The idea that they could experience fear, that they might be calling desperately for help, added a new dimension to the conflict. Sarah paced the room, her mind working through scenarios. This changes things. If they're truly vulnerable, truly afraid, we might have an opportunity here. Not just to win the war, but to end it. She turned to her team. "I want to know everything we can about their current situation. Supplies, troop movements, energy readings, anything that might give us insight into their state of mind. And Dr. Reeves, keep working on that transmission. See if you can decode any more of it." As her team sprang into action, Sarah couldn't shake a nagging thought. If the aliens were capable of fear, of desperation, what else might they be capable of? Understanding, reason, even empathy. Over the next few days, a clearer picture of the alien situation emerged. Their resources were indeed strained, their forces stretched thin. The loss of their central communication network had done more damage than initially realized, fracturing their command structure and causing infighting among different factions. Sarah pored over the reports, trying to piece together a strategy that could exploit these weaknesses without resorting to wholesale slaughter. The more she learned about the aliens, the more she began to see them not as faceless invaders, but as a complex, albeit hostile, civilization. One evening, as she was reviewing the latest intelligence, she received an urgent summons from Dr. Reeves. She found him in his lab, surrounded by screens filled with alien symbols and waveforms. "Captain," he said, his voice trembling with excitement, "I've made a breakthrough. I've managed to translate a significant portion of the alien language." Sarah's eyes widened. That's incredible, Doctor. What have you learned? Reeves took a deep breath. It's not what we expected. The aliens, they call themselves the Vorkath. And according to these transmissions, they didn't come here to conquer us. They came here to escape. Escape? From what? Some kind of catastrophe in their home system. A stellar event, maybe, or a war. It's not entirely clear, but Earth wasn't their first choice. They were desperate, looking for any habitable world. Sarah sank into a chair, her mind reeling. So all this destruction, this war. A tragic misunderstanding, Reeves finished. They saw our technology, our military, and assumed we would be hostile. So they struck first, hoping to secure a new home for their people. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. All the death, the devastation, born out of fear and desperation on both sides. She thought of all the soldiers she'd sent into battle, the cities reduced to rubble, the lives shattered. But amidst the shock and grief, a new possibility began to form in her mind. Doctor, she said slowly, if we can understand them, communicate with them. Reeves nodded, catching on to her train of thought. We might be able to end this war without further bloodshed. Sarah stood, her resolve hardening. We need to get this information to General Okoye immediately, and I want you to start working on a way to transmit a message to the Vorkath leadership. If there's even a chance for peace, we have to take it. As she left the lab, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The fate of two species now hung in the balance. Could centuries of human conflict and mistrust be set aside in the name of peace? Could the aliens overcome their fear and desperation to see humans as potential allies rather than enemies? The next phase of the war would not be fought with howitzers and EMPs, but with words, understanding, and the hope for a future where humans and Vorkath could coexist. It was a daunting challenge, but as Sarah had learned throughout this war, humanity was capable of rising to even the most impossible challenges. The alien dilemma had become humanity's dilemma, and the resolution would determine the course of Earth's future among the stars. The resolution. The revelation about the true nature of the Vorkath invasion had sent shockwaves through Earth's leadership. In a secure bunker deep beneath what was left of Geneva, Captain Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, presenting the startling intelligence gathered by Dr. Reeves and his team. And so, we believe that opening a channel of communication with the Vorkath leadership is not only possible, but potentially crucial to ending this conflict. Sarah concluded, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, some supportive, others vehemently opposed to the idea of negotiating with the invaders. General Okoye raised his hand, silencing the council. Captain Chen, he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. While this information is certainly illuminating, it doesn't change the fact that these aliens have caused unprecedented destruction on our planet. How can we trust that this isn't some sort of deception? Sarah had anticipated this question. Sir, the intercepts we've decoded weren't meant for our ears. They're internal communications, distress calls to their home system. There's no strategic value in faking that kind of vulnerability. Dr. Reeves, standing beside her, added, furthermore, our analysis of their technology and resource usage supports the theory that they're a civilization in crisis. They're not here as conquerors, but as refugees, desperate, frightened refugees with vastly superior technology. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. It was President Yarambiki who finally broke the silence. Even if what you say is true, Captain, how do you propose we proceed? We can't simply lay down our arms and hope for the best. Sarah straightened, her mind racing through the plan she'd been formulating since the discovery. No, Madam President, we can't. But we can open a dialogue from a position of strength. We've pushed them back, disrupted their communications, shown them that humanity is not to be underestimated. Now we offer them an alternative to mutual destruction. She tapped a control, bringing up a holographic display of Earth and the surrounding space. We propose a joint mission, human and Vorkath, to a nearby star system we've identified as potentially habitable. We offer them our assistance in establishing a new home, in exchange for peaceful coexistence and shared technology. The council erupted again, but this time there was an undercurrent of hope amid the skepticism. President Mbeki leaned forward, her eyes sharp. And if they refuse? If this is a ploy to buy time for reinforcements? Then we'll be no worse off than we are now, Sarah replied firmly. But if it succeeds, we end this war and potentially gain an ally with technology centuries ahead of our own. The benefits far outweigh the risks. After hours of debate, the council finally reached a decision. Operation Olive Branch, as it was dubbed, was given the green light. Sarah, along with a team of diplomats, scientists, and a small military contingent, would attempt to make contact with the Vorkath leadership. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Dr. Reeves worked tirelessly to refine their understanding of the Vorkath language, while Sarah drilled with her team on first contact protocols and potential scenarios. Finally, the day arrived. At a neutral location, the war-torn city that had been evacuated early in the conflict, Sarah stood with her team, facing a delegation of Vorkath that had cautiously agreed to the meeting. The aliens were tall, their bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with their movements. Their eyes, large and multifaceted, regarded the humans with a mixture of wariness and curiosity. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped forward. Using the translation device Dr. Reeves had prepared, she began to speak. "Greetings, people of Vorkath. We come to you not as enemies, but as fellow sentient beings seeking understanding and peace." The lead Vorkath, its scales shimmering with hues of blue and green, responded. The translator conveyed its words. "You speak of peace, yet your weapons have devastated our forces. Why should we trust you?" Sarah nodded, acknowledging the point. "We fought because we believed we were under attack, just as you struck first believing we would be hostile. But now we know the truth of your situation, your search for a new home. We're here to offer an alternative to this war, a chance for both our species to survive and thrive." She outlined the proposal: joint exploration and colonization of a new world, sharing of technology and resources, a future of cooperation instead of conflict. As she spoke, she could see the Vorkath delegation's posture changing, the hostile wariness giving way to cautious hope. The negotiations that followed were intense, often teetering on the brink of collapse. Trust was in short supply on both sides, with centuries of human conflicts and the recent devastation of the invasion weighing heavily on every discussion. But as the talks progressed, something remarkable began to happen. The more the two species interacted, the more they began to understand each other. The Vorkath, it turned out, were not so different from humans in their core desires: safety, prosperity, and a future for their children. Sarah found herself forming an unlikely bond with Zarthal, the lead Vorkath negotiator. During a break in the formal talks, they stood together, looking out over the ruined city that served as their meeting ground. "Your people have suffered greatly," Zarthal said, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the setting sun, "as have ours. Perhaps that shared pain can be the foundation for understanding." Sarah nodded, feeling the glimmer of hope. "In our history, some of our greatest alliances were forged in the aftermath of terrible conflicts. Maybe this is our chance to write a new chapter, not just for Earth or Vorkath, but for both our species among the stars." As the negotiations neared their conclusion, a new crisis threatened to unravel everything they had worked for. A faction of hardline Vorkath, unwilling to accept peace with the humans, launched a desperate attack on the negotiation site. In the chaos that followed, Sarah found herself fighting side by side with Zarthal, human, and Vorkath weapons fire, intermingling as they repelled the attackers. It was a crucible of fire, a moment that would define the future of both species. As the dust settled, Sarah and Zarthal stood amidst the aftermath, breathing heavily. They looked at each other, then at the mixed group of humans and Vorkath who had come together to defend the peace process. "Perhaps," Zarthel said slowly, "this is what we needed. A common enemy, a shared victory." Sarah nodded, a wry smile on her face. Nothing brings people together like having to watch each other's backs. In the days that followed, the peace accords were finalized. The terms were complex, involving gradual withdrawal of Vorkath forces, sharing of technology to repair Earth's damaged ecosystems, and a joint mission to explore and colonize the nearby star system. As Sarah stood on the podium beside President Mbeki and the Vorkath High Commander, watching the signing of the historic document, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment, tinged with sadness for all that had been lost. The president's voice rang out across the assembled crowd of humans and Vorkath. "Today, we turn the page on one of the darkest chapters in human history. But we do not simply return to the way things were. We move forward into a future that holds challenges and opportunities we could never have imagined." She gestured to the Vorkath delegation. "Our new allies bring with them knowledge that will revolutionize our understanding of the universe. And in return, we offer them something they had lost, hope and a place to call home." As the crowds cheered, Sarah's mind was already racing ahead to the challenges that lay before them. Integrating Vorkath technology, preparing for deep space exploration, rebuilding Earth's shattered cities. The work was only beginning. But as she looked out at the sea of faces, human and alien alike, she saw something that filled her with determination. In their eyes, she saw not just relief at the end of the war, but excitement for what was to come. Humanity had faced its greatest trial and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. They had taken their place among the stars, not through conquest, but through understanding and cooperation. As the ceremony concluded, Dr. Reeves approached Sarah, a twinkle in his eye. "So, Captain," he said, "ready for our next adventure?" Sarah grinned, feeling the weight of the past few years lifting from her shoulders. "You know, Doctor, I think I am. We got a whole universe to explore, and this time, we're not going alone." She glanced up at the sky, where the first stars were becoming visible in the twilight. Somewhere out there was humanity's future, and for the first time in a long while, that future looked bright. The war that had begun with the thunder of alien ships entering Earth's atmosphere had ended not with a bang, but with a handshake, and in that ending was a new beginning. For Earth, for the Vorkath, and for the galaxy that awaited them. As Sarah Chen, once a captain in Earth's desperate defense, now a leader in humanity's cosmic endeavor, stepped off the podium, she knew that the greatest adventures still lay ahead. The story of humanity among the stars was just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead.